1. Annabelle doll. At first glance, she looks harmless, just a simple rag doll. But the story behind Annabelle is anything but child's play. It all began in the 1970s, when a nursing student received the doll as a gift. Within days, strange things started happening. The doll would change positions on its own, show up in different rooms, and even leave handwritten notes asking for help. Terrified, she and her roommate contacted a medium, who claimed the doll was being inhabited by the spirit of a young girl named Annabelle Higgins. But what seemed innocent at first quickly took a darker turn. The activity became aggressive. A friend of the girl's reported being physically attacked, waking up with deep marks on his body after dismissing the doll as just a toy. The case eventually reached paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren, who concluded it wasn't a child at all, but a demonic entity manipulating the object. They took the doll to their occult museum, where it remains to this day, locked inside a glass case bearing a clear warning: do not open. The story went on to inspire films like Annabelle, Creation, and its appearances in the Conjuring universe. But, according to the Warrens themselves, what you see in the movies is still toned down compared to the real thing. 2. Robert the doll. At first glance, Robert looks like nothing more than an old toy. But behind that simple appearance lies one of the most unsettling stories ever recorded. The doll belonged to a boy named Robert Eugene Otto, who received it as a child and gave the toy his own name. As time went on, strange behavior began inside the house. The boy would talk to the doll as if it were alive, and according to reports, responses could be heard. But what came next was even more disturbing. Whenever something was broken or left in a mess, the boy would say, "It wasn't me, it was Robert." The family soon noticed that the doll seemed to move on its own. Neighbors claimed they saw it shifting positions in the window when the house was empty. Odd laughter echoed through the halls at night, and the boy himself, once calm, began to change, as if something was influencing him. As the years passed, Robert was never thrown away. In fact, he stayed with Eugene well into adulthood. Even after his owner's death, new residents of the house reported unexplained events tied to the doll. Today, Robert is on display in a museum, but with one unusual rule. Visitors are expected to ask permission before taking a photo. Many claim that ignoring this warning leads to bad luck, accidents, and consequences no one can quite explain. 3. The Dybbuk Box. It all started with something seemingly ordinary, an old wine cabinet bought at a thrift shop. But what looked like a simple curiosity quickly turned into something deeply unsettling. Soon after bringing it home, the owner began noticing strange changes, flickering lights, unexplained odors, and a constant feeling of being watched. But the worst came at night. Intense nightmares became a regular occurrence, always involving a dark, shadowy presence. Over time, those dreams began affecting others in the house, as if whatever was attached to the box was spreading. When the origin of the object was investigated, a chilling explanation surfaced. It was said to be tied to a Dybbuk, an entity from Jewish folklore believed to cling to objects in order to torment, or even possess, the living. Inside the box were strange, seemingly ritualistic items, reinforcing the sense that it was never meant to be opened. The object passed through several owners, and nearly all of them reported similar experiences: sudden illness, extreme bad luck, and intense psychological episodes. Frightened, most chose to get rid of it as quickly as possible. The story became so well known that it inspired the film The Possession. And to this day, one question remains: is the box truly sealed, or just waiting for the next person to open it? 4. The Crying Boy. During the 1980s, a wave of mysterious house fires began drawing attention across the United Kingdom. Entire homes were reduced to ashes, furniture destroyed, everything consumed by flames. But in the middle of the wreckage, something kept showing up untouched: a painting of a crying boy. The artwork, known as The Crying Boy, was incredibly popular at the time. Thousands of people had a copy hanging in their homes. But after multiple fires followed the same eerie pattern, rumors began to spread. The painting was cursed. Firefighters reported finding the image virtually undamaged, even when the rest of the house had been completely destroyed. In many cases, it was the only item left standing. Fear spread quickly. Stories circulated claiming that anyone who owned the painting was inviting tragedy, especially fires. The panic became so intense that people began destroying their own copies. Some believe the image carried negative energy. Others say it was all coincidence or a technical explanation. But the truth is, the mystery has never been fully resolved. And the question still lingers: why, in the middle of a fire, does the crying boy never burn? 5. The Hope Diamond Brilliant, rare, and supposedly cursed. The Hope Diamond is one of the most famous gems in history, not just for its beauty, but for the trail of misfortune said to follow its owners. Legend has it the curse began when the diamond was taken from a temple in India, allegedly stolen from a sacred statue. From that moment on, a pattern of dark events seemed to unfold. One of its early owners was reportedly murdered. Others faced financial ruin, lost fortunes, or died under mysterious circumstances. Among the most famous names linked to the diamond are King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette, both executed during the French Revolution, a fate many have connected to the jewel. Over the years, the diamond changed hands multiple times, always surrounded by stories of extreme bad luck. Even the wealthy and powerful didn't seem immune to its supposed curse. Today, the Hope Diamond is displayed in a museum under heavy security. And still, the fascination remains, because despite the passage of time, many believe the curse never truly faded. And perhaps the most chilling part is this: all it needs is a new. 6. James Dean's car. He was young, famous, and full of promise. But James Dean's story ended in tragedy. In 1955, the actor died in a fatal crash while driving his Porsche 550 Spider, nicknamed Little Bastard. What no one expected was that the nightmare wouldn't end there. After the accident, parts of the car were sold off, and that's when things took a strange turn. A mechanic who bought the engine suffered a serious accident shortly after installing it in another vehicle. Another buyer, who purchased parts of the suspension, was also involved in a near-fatal crash. The coincidences kept piling up. One race car using parts from the Porsche reportedly split in half during a competition. In another case, a garage storing some of the wreckage caught fire. Yet, oddly enough, the car's components remained undamaged. Reports continued to surface over the years, all tied to pieces of the Little Bastard. For many, it didn't feel like bad luck, but something more, as if a curse had latched onto what was left of the car. The story became so well known that it even inspired an episode of Supernatural, where haunted objects carry tragedy and continue causing harm long after the original event. In James Dean's case, the resemblance is chilling, as if the crash never truly ended. Today, some of the wreckage has mysteriously disappeared, adding even more to the mystery. And the question remains, was the accident just the beginning? Or did the car never leave that moment behind? 7. Thomas Busby's chair. At first glance, it's just an old wooden chair, but its history is marked by death, and a warning few took seriously. The so-called death chair once belonged to a man named Thomas Busby, who was executed in 18th century England. Before his hanging, Busby is said to have placed a curse on the chair. Anyone who sat in it would die soon after. What sounded like nothing more than a legend began to gain credibility over time. Numerous accounts emerged of people who ignored the warning, only to suffer fatal accidents days later. Soldiers, workers, and visitors who sat in the chair were said to have died under sudden and unexpected circumstances, often shortly afterward. The pattern became so disturbing that the chair was eventually removed from public use. Today, it's displayed in a museum, but not like any ordinary exhibit. It has been mounted high on a wall, completely out of reach. The reason is simple. No one wants to find out if the curse is still real. And given its history, maybe it's better that way. 8. The Codex Gigas Massive, mysterious, and wrapped in a dark legend. The Codex Gigas, also known as the Devil's Bible, is one of the most fascinating manuscripts in history. Created during the Middle Ages, it stands out not only for its enormous size, but for its unusual content, including a full-page illustration of the devil himself. According to legend, the book was written by a monk who had been sentenced to death. In a desperate attempt to save himself, he promised to create the greatest manuscript ever made, in a single night. But realizing it was impossible, he allegedly made a pact with a dark entity to complete the work. The result was the Codex Gigas. Beyond biblical texts, the manuscript contains strange writings, historical records, and even what some believe to be ritualistic material. Many claim it carries a negative energy, tied to the way it was created. Others point out that its very existence defies logic, since it would have taken years for a single person to produce. To this day, the Codex Gigas remains preserved, surrounded by mystery and speculation. And the question still stands. Is it simply an extraordinary work, or the result of something that should never have been summoned? 9. Tutankhamun's mask, covered in gold and precious stones. Tutankhamun's mask is one of the most iconic artifacts of ancient Egypt, but behind its beauty lies one of the most famous curses in history. It all began with the discovery of the young pharaoh's tomb in 1922. Led by archaeologist Howard Carter, the excavation revealed a treasure nearly untouched for thousands of years. But not long after the tomb was opened, strange events began to unfold. The expedition's financial backer died suddenly, followed by others connected to the discovery. Mysterious illnesses, accidents, and unexpected deaths fueled the idea of a pharaoh's curse, a punishment for those who disturbed the rest of the dead. As the most famous object from the tomb, the mask became directly associated with these gutens. For many, it wasn't just a historical artifact, but part of something greater, tied to ancient beliefs about spiritual protection and revenge. Skeptics argue it was all coincidence or media exaggeration at the time. Still, the debate continues to this day, because when it comes to disturbing the past, maybe some things are better left untouched. 10. The Myrtles Plantation Mirror. Inside an old mansion in the southern United States, there's a mirror that many believe is inhabited. Located in the infamous Myrtles Plantation, this seemingly ordinary object carries a history filled with tragedy and unsettling reports. Legend says a woman and her children died inside the house, possibly by poisoning. According to old traditions, mirrors should be covered after a death to prevent souls from becoming trapped. But in this case, that step was never taken. Over the years, visitors and residents began noticing something strange. Handprints would appear on the glass, often small, like those of children. Even after being cleaned, they would come back. Reflections seemed to move on their own, as if something inside was watching. Some people claim to have seen figures standing behind them in the mirror, only to turn around and find no one there. Others describe an overwhelming sense of unease just by getting close. Today, the mirror remains one of the plantation's most chilling attractions, and many people avoid looking at it for too long, afraid of what might be staring back.